Alrighty, folks, welcome to State of the Snowpack, February 15th, 2024. My name is Sarah. I work for Capow Guiding. We're one of the guiding companies in town. We do avalanche skills training courses, which is definitely something we always recommend for people that are new to the backcountry. State of the Snowpack was brought to our attention from our friend Kyle Lamotte, who knew Morgan, who's one of the main organizers in Nelson for State of the Snowpack. And she asked me tonight to just kind of do a poll of people that are new to the backcountry and people that have, 5+ years experience. So I'm just gonna poll the room. Who's new to the backcountry? So kind of less than 5 years experience, maybe just moved to Revelstoke or whatever. 10-ish, mark that down, 10-ish. And who's been in the backcountry for, 5+ years, sort of a bit of a veteran to the world there? 10-ish, 15-ish. Okay, so we'll mark that down too. So yeah, right on. We'll just kind of cruise through here. Tonight we've got Ben YEAGER. He's an ACMG apprentice candidate. He's got CAA Ops Level 2. He's going to be telling us about the snowpack. And then we've got Mark SMILEY, who's a mountain guide, 20+ years experience there in the backcountry. And he's going to chat about using Gaia and GPS in the backcountry, and I think a partner finding rubric, if I'm not mistaken. So that's pretty sweet. Just a disclaimer here, this is a community discussion, so the information that is being presented tonight is just to the best of our ability here. We're not saying, go ski brown shorts naked tomorrow, no problems or whatever. We're just information sharing tonight, and as we know, nothing's just concrete all the time. So yeah, use this information, use it wisely, but of course, take cautions out there, of course. What is State of the Snowpack? So yeah, Capow's happy to sponsor this, just a community conversation in the aims of making sure that everyone is making smart, informed decisions in the backcountry so that everyone can get home kind of safe at night. And that's kind of it. We've got a mission here, essentially just bridging the gap between avalanche professionals and recreationalists. So this is the part of the presentation where I ask, who is an avalanche professional in the room? Raise your hand. So I see Marty, I see Ben, Jack, you could kind of raise, Jack. So Jack is also going into the apprentice guide program. So he's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of days on skis this year. So definitely feel free to, and Mark, of course, definitely feel free in the intermission, in the break, to go and chat to these guys if you have a question to them, because they're more than happy to answer stuff. So yeah, I went over today's topic, so I just want to say that here in Revelstoke, we're at the Legion, but we're on the traditional territories of the Sinixt, Secwepemc, Ktunaxa, and Silks nations. The Sinixt did live in Revelstoke. The other 3 nations kind of just cruised through and traded. So yeah, shout out to the Sinixt. And then in Indigenous principles, it's all about, reciprocity. So if we were to go harvest something, we'd leave tobacco as a gift, because it's all about sort of the give and take of nature. So State of the Snowpack and Capow Guiding and SMILEY's project are basically trying to just give this knowledge in the hopes that we get more snow and better skiing. So without further ado, Ben YEAGER, everybody.
Hello. Welcome to the State of the Snowpack. Sarah did a nice job teeing us up there, kind of what we're doing with this whole thing. We have so many people out in Revelstoke, professionals, and even just recreationalists that are out there all the time, and there's so much information going around Revelstoke that if we can create a platform to share that, there's no reason to hide any of this stuff, good or bad information. It's all for the better. So that's our mission here. A couple photos from the winter so far just to get us excited. We've had some powder skiing, we've had some rain, and we've had about everything in between. So we'll just get started. So to get us going, just paint a bit of a bigger picture of what's going on out there. This is a graph from the Mount Fidelity weather plot, which is in Rogers Pass, about 1,900 meters. Red bar at the top is the maximum height of snow that they've ever received there in a winter. It's tough to see, there's a white line in the middle here. That's the average height of snow. And then down at the bottom, purplish line is the lowest height of snow, and this turquoise is us this winter. So we're on the lower end of things. We just dipped below it in the warm spell. But it has been worse, so keep that in mind. One quick thing just before I forget, we do have a camera going tonight, and if you're heading to the bar to grab a drink, all good. Just try not to linger in between that, or we will see the side of your head in the presentation. Yeah, we'll talk some notable storms and kind of the layers that have formed throughout the winter. In lieu of our recent holiday of love yesterday, I was going to talk about our relationship that we've had with the Snowpack this year. It's been an interesting one. So early season was a bit of a rough start, slow start. Took a couple dates for us to get going. You know, we were unsure of each other. But after a few dates, we decided we want to make this work. We're going to try it. It was going pretty well. We're talking to our friends about this person, you know, we're excited. Late in December, we're kind of cruising. Things are going well. Regular snowfall, we're pretty close to normal. December was a little below average, but we still had pretty snow up till Christmas. And then the start of January came around. Hello. Start of January was very much our honeymoon phase of the winter. We were getting a lot of snow, we were skiing a lot of deep powder, having a great time, couldn't get better. I was working up at Monashee Powder Snowcats there, and we had a 6-day period where we had 140 centimeters of snow at 1,900 meters. So it was pumping, we were having a great time. Then we got into the middle of January, we kind of hit our first point of tension. It got pretty cold. I'm sure you guys noticed, around minus 30 there for a whole week. And then after that cold snap, you know, it was kind of like things are getting harder, but we're still making it work and we're still having fun. So we're going to keep doing this for a little bit. And then we had our first big fight, and it got really hot. And it rained all the way to the top. It's kind of like we had to take a week off. You know, they maybe went to their parents' house for a week to let things cool down. We did some other activities. We skied groomed cat roads up at the lodge for 6 days, which is more fun than it sounds. We were still skiing. After that cooled down for a little bit, we got back together. We had a nice meeting, a good talk, but we were left with this big crust on the top, which was like our big scar, you know. After you break that trust first time in the relationship, it's always going to be there. No matter how deep it gets, you can always dig down and find it. So that's going to be us for the rest of the winter moving forward. After that, we've now had a little bit of snow. Skiing is coming back. If you've been out the last little while, I'm sure you've noticed. Powder skiing is making a comeback. So a few notable layers to talk about. And I'll touch on each of these here in a minute. But at the bottom of our snowpack, we've got a little bit of faceted snow, which is that weak, sugary grain that doesn't like to bond well to other things. This is a similar setup to last year. It was a bit more prevalent last year, but it is at the bottom of the snowpack. We've got our December 5th melt freeze crust. That was from the first atmospheric river event, early December. January 3rd, there's a surface hoar layer that formed that lingered around for a little while there. And then we had a facet layer from January 16th. And for people that aren't sure what the dates mean, the dates refer to the date that weak layer was buried by new snow. So you can kind of think about the few days before that date, what the weather was doing. And that usually lines up well with what was going on. Now we've got our February 2nd melt freeze crust, which if you've been out skiing recently, you'll definitely have felt it. And then we've got our settling storm snow on top of that, so about 30 to 60 centimeters up top. So our December 5th melt freeze crust, like I said, formed by the cold temps after that first rain event early season. This went pretty much ridgetop everywhere. You're going to find this near the base of the snowpack. It's about 30 to 50 centimeters off the ground, depending where you're at. And it's been relatively quiet, and it was dormant for about a month. We had some avalanches happening on that very early in the season, right after it was formed. It went dormant for about a month, and then during that last warm spell at the start of it, we did see some deep, persistent avalanches step down to this layer. We had crowns that were 2+ meters, size 3s, things running really far. So it did make a reappearance in that warm spell, and we'll talk about how this new crust is sort of capping all of these layers a bit later on. But it was something that happened in the warm spell and was pretty interesting. We had some big avalanches. Then we had our January 3rd surface hoar. So that's a photo of the surface hoar itself, taken from a crown profile done on an avalanche up in our tenure at Monashee Powder. It was a little bit interesting for us. It was more present in the alpine and high tree line, which is a little unusual for surface hoar. Usually it gets a bit blown away or sun affected up in the alpine. But it produced natural and skier triggered avalanches for us. We've got a few photos of those. Interestingly enough, any avalanche that we triggered on skis was a remote trigger, meaning we were away from it and triggered an adjacent slope. So this one, we were skiing down in the bowl below and triggered this away from the side of us. And this guy was another remote triggered avalanche. What was interesting about this one, it was a frequent non-performing avalanche slope for us in our tenure. Usually everything around it will go and this one doesn't. But the guide walked up to this to ski group down it and remoted at size 2. So that was pretty surprising for us. And then this guy here, this was a vehicle remote, so we had our road builder out. He was driving around the upside of this moraine, and then he triggered this guy as well, a size 2 vehicle remote. So for us, it was pretty stubborn and tricky to pin down where it was going to be and where it wasn't. But it's sort of done its thing now, and with the warm temperatures, not much of a concern moving forward.
Ben, what does size 2 mean?
A size 2 avalanche, correct. So we'll talk sizes a little bit tonight. Usually size 1 and 2 is what we're going to talk about. But size 2 is really our threshold where we want to pay attention. If you've seen that in the avalanche bulletin or people talking about it, the definition of a size 2 avalanche is the ability to bury, injure, or kill somebody. So that's the size where you really don't want to start messing with that. Size 1 is described as relatively harmless to humans. So just for some good context, thanks Mark. So after that, we moved into our Jan 16th facets. This happened during that really cold spell, and this is actually happening right now to the surface of the snow, so it'll be something to watch moving forward. Basically what faceting is that moisture that's in the top layer of the snow is leaving, going into the sky, and it's just creating those weak, sugary grains that don't like to stick to whatever's coming to it next. So you'll notice that right now the snow feels very low density, and in some spots that's just nice powder, but in some spots it's because that surface is faceting right now. It was a pretty lingering instability for us. It stuck around for a couple of weeks, and it was really tricky because it was unresponsive to ski cuts for the most part. So when we would go into piece of terrain to try and control that, we wouldn't get it to go, and then it was often the 4th, 5th, 6th skier on the slope that would find the sweet spot. So this one was pretty tricky, and it produced widespread avalanches in that warm spell. So when the warm temps came, this thing became really reactive, down 60 to 80 centimeters, size 2, 2.5 avalanches, and those were what triggered the deep persistent avalanches. So a large load moving down the slope, and then about halfway down, it was stepping down to that deep layer and going all the way to ground in a lot of spots. That's one avalanche that we had that was triggered on that layer. Couple interesting things about this one. This was a ski cut. It was a size 1.5. Sometimes in the mechanized world and guiding world, we'll try and maintain the surface snow. So if you have a grain like surface hoar or facets on the surface, if you can ski that and disturb it before the new snow comes, you can often really help yourself later on after the next snow arrives. But this one, it's tough to see in the photo, but in the bed surface was full of ski tracks. So this one, we thought we had done a good job maintaining, but for this persistent weak layer, it stuck around even in spots that we previously skied. So that one was also pretty tricky. So that brings us to our latest and greatest, the February 1st melt freeze crust. You'll hear it called a couple different things depending on where you're at. So yeah, this is the aftermath of our big warm spell. I'm sure you felt it if you've been out skiing. Depending on where you're at right now, there's about 20 to 50 centimeters of new snow sitting on top of that crust. That tapers pretty quick with elevation, so the lower you get, the harder you're going to feel that crust. And this crust exists about to 2,400 meters or so. So for the Monashee side of things, generally it's to ridgetop. Once you're in the Selkirks, especially getting into Rogers Pass, where you can get well above 2,400 meters, that's something you're really going to want to pay attention to. This guy's really easy to find right now. You're either going to feel it while you're walking. You can flip your pole upside down, poke it, and if you stop feeling that crust, it's time to switch gears in your brain a little bit, and we'll talk about why that is here. And right now, it's a little bit too early to tell what this thing is going to do in the long run here. There's There's just not quite enough snow sitting on it yet. We haven't really had a slab develop either from wind or it's settling into a slab. But we're getting there, and we'll talk a bit more about that here. So what's going on out there now? Post-rain events. Powder skiing is slowly coming back. That's a nice photo from yesterday up towards Little Sifton. We had great skiing up there. So like I said, about 30 to 50 centimeters of snow. On that surface snow, we have a bit of a mix. It's either nice, loose, dry powder skiing. On solar aspects, so aspects where the sun can really hit it, we've got a mix of sun crusts. It's kind of a few vintages of them in there. You'll feel them if you're skiing on a south aspect especially. We've got some isolated pockets of wind slab, so just some small pockets of wind slab in wind affected areas. Seems like the wind actually really picked up today, and that's going to make a big difference here moving forward. And it was a bit of an easterly, northerly wind for us, which is atypical for this area. Normally we're in that nice southwest flow, so if you're used to the wind loading always happening on one side, after today it's going to be on the other side. So right now we've got wind effect on all aspects, so it's not going to be as easy to pin down as it can be sometimes. And how is that new snow bonding? In some spots, it seems like it's off to a good start. If you're trying to pull that snow off the crust with your hand, the first few centimeters feels like it's sticking pretty well. And in other spots, you'll get a nice slough or loose dry to run right on that crust, and it's got lots of energy, and that crust is a nice sliding surface for it. So it's really dependent on the spot, and it's kind of tough to tell, and we're still working on that. And this cold weather that we're having right now is going to affect what's going on with the crust. So I talked to a few guides and forecasters around just to get their opinions on what they think might happen with this thing. So this is Jamie, he's a guide I work with up in Monashee Powder. He says spatial distribution may be a factor in which areas sinter. And when he says sintering is the process of the snow bonding or improving its bond there together. It would be the opposite of faceting. And which remain problem areas. He says, I'll see reports of random large avalanches on the Feb 1st crust throughout the next few months. So something to keep an eye on with this crust and these cold temps that we have right now is there's going to be some faceting happening around there. It's really easy to dig down to that crust with your hand. And if you're feeling that crust, you'll notice a faceted grain is something that would be really hard to make a snowball out of. Even on a crust, sometimes you can wipe your hand on the crust and they'll even like jump off of the crust a little bit. So if you're starting to see that, it's a good idea to make a min report, tell somebody about that. That's going to be really useful information as we move into the next few storm cycles here. This is from Joey Vosberg, super guide Joey. I'm sure lots of you guys know him. He says, as soon as more snow or wind hits, I assume there will be a cycle. This clear period currently will become our next surface condition with the probability of stepping down to that interface. So what he's talking about there, and we've talked about this surface faceting that's happening right now. When this next storm comes in, whether that's 10 or 50 centimeters of snow, that surface snow that's on right now is likely going to be our next bed surface. It's probably going to be a surface faceting sort of thing, but it's going to be quite easy for it to then step down into that crust and create those larger avalanches. So it's going to be tough to say if it's going to be the surface or the crust, but we are building into a time here where we're going to have some potential for some larger avalanches. And these next two are from Andrew Jones. He is an avalanche safety officer up in Rogers Pass. He's got some cool things to say about it. So since it cooled off, that crust has been buried by about 35 centimeters of snow, and there's a weaker crust down 15. We suspect that this layer will become a persistent weak layer and become more of a problem as slab properties begin to form. So like we've talked about, it's just mostly loose snow right now. We're waiting for that slab to develop, which could either be wind or as we get into some warmer temperatures and that snow starts to settle and turn into a slab. We'll just have to wait and see how that goes. And then this is, I think, a pretty key note, especially if you're going to be skiing up in Rogers Pass anytime soon. There's been some interesting avalanches that have happened on this guy. So as the hazard trends towards low, these isolated pockets remain at high elevations and have the potential to catch folks off guard. It's something we've been thinking about and trying to convey in our bulletin without adding a separate avalanche problem. So what he's talking about here is that above 2,400 meter elevation, where you really need to switch your brain Essentially that crust, I've heard a few guides call it this, is the new ground. So if you're skiing and you can really feel the crust, you essentially don't really need to worry about all those pre-existing persistent weak layers that were below that. It's now bridged or capped, and those are terms you're going to hear people talking about. But once you're above that crust elevation, you're now into the full winter snowpack of all the persistent weak layers. And there has been a couple of large skier trigger avalanches in Rogers Pass in the last 5 days that have really caught people by surprise. So just think it's neat. They're trying to convey that in their bulletin without adding too much avalanche problems, but I just wanted to highlight that here, as that is probably where you're going to find yourself in the most trouble right now, is above that crust, 2,500 meters and up. So now that we know everything about those persistent weak layers, this is a profile I dug on February 4th. So this was just after the first snowfall, after the big warm-up. We were up high in the Alpine, 2,350 meters. We had 232 centimeters of snow. And in this location, that February 1st crust was 15 centimeters thick and about as hard as the floor that we're standing on. It rock solid and very much there. And then we've got that crust at the bottom. It's about 30 centimeters off the ground in this location. And then everything in between that, you might hear the term well-settled mid-pack or see that in the bulletin. In that mid-pack where we were finding those persistent weak layers, we were unable to find them. We had no compression test results here. We did a deep tap test, which is just a compression test that focused on a deep layer on that crust and got no results. So that warm-up was a big shock to the snowpack. But it also in some ways has helped it become more uniform and heal some of those layers that were going on in the middle there. So we'll kind of switch gears here and start talking about our avalanche bulletin. So this is as of today at 5 o'clock, just updated a couple hours ago. We've got a rating of 2 or moderate in the Alpine, 2 at tree line, and 1 below tree line. And we're in a pretty stable weather pattern right now, so over the next few days, they're not really expecting that to change much. And this is our forecast region right now. They're doing the flexible boundaries on the Avalanche Canada the last couple of years. So these boundaries can change. We're Revelstoke, right around that middle weather station with the 3 on it there. So this bulletin currently encompasses both sides of the river. So we're talking Selkirks and Monashees here. And the hazard rating up in Rogers Pass was the same this afternoon. They've got it as a 221 as well. And we got a couple avalanche problems on there. So the first one is a persistent slab. So this is in that upper 50 centimeters of snow above the crust. And we've got sort of two problem layers going on in there. One is the crust itself. They have seen a couple of avalanches happen on that crust. And then there's a few things going on buried sun crusts, on some solar aspects, as well as some really isolated pockets of surface ore. So you're probably going to find those on opposite locations. On the sunny side, you're going to find the crust, easy to find, easy to feel with your skiing. And then that surface ore is going to be in areas that are really sheltered, and sheltered from things like the wind and or the sun. Sun has a real habit of melting surface ore, and wind has a habit of blowing it over and knocking it right off. So you're most likely to find that probably a north aspect. If you're skiing and the snow feels like it hasn't been wind affected, probably a good spot to find something like surface ore hiding. So that's our persistent slab problem. They've got it at all aspects, alpine and tree line, and up to size 2.5 avalanches. This one was pulled off a min a couple days ago. This was a remote triggered by a snowmobiler up on Boulder. They triggered it from pretty far distance away. This is up near Turbo Hill for those of you who know Boulder. But pretty good propagation. You can see they talk about in the bulletin as well, this persistent slab is going to be more likely where you see wind affected snow. And you can see above in the photo there all that wind ripples, sastrugi, that kind of stuff. So that's going to be a likely candidate to find a persistent slab for sure. The second problem they've got on is a wind slab problem. And like we just talked about with that wind switching direction today and coming from the unusual direction, they put it to all aspects at this point. It says a change in wind direction has formed wind slabs on all aspects. Cracking and womping below your feet are indicators of wind slab. So if you're walking along, you start to notice some shooting cracks off your ski tips, or you hear a woomph, which if you've never heard of WUMF before, it's a settlement in the snowpack. You've essentially started an avalanche, you're just not on the right terrain for it to do anything. And if you've never heard one, when you hear one, you'll know why they call it a WUMF. It very much sounds like that. So they've got an alpine and tree line, and size 1 to 2 avalanches expected there. So getting into that range of avalanches that we don't want to be messing with. This is a wind slab that I triggered yesterday. So it's very much out there. This is a size 1. And just like the bulletin said, we were walking sort of on the lower portion of the slope on the up track. I got 2 little shooting cracks right off my feet. We were talking about it. I took one more step, and we had it release above us on this slope. This one ran on a buried sun crust as well, but it definitely caught us off guard a little bit. One reason it was hard to feel is it's a buried wind slab, so that surface snow still felt really loose and dry and nice, but I noticed underfoot it was starting to feel a little bit firmer and wind affected. Got a couple shooting cracks, took one more step, and triggered the avalanche. So in some spots it'll be obvious. You'll feel that wind textured snow if you're skiing along and it immediately changes. You're going to want to stop and reevaluate what you're doing. But in other cases it's going to be underneath that new snow. So wind slab's definitely a priority to keep in the front of mind coming up the next few days. So they've got their terrain and travel advice. They were saying to avoid steep, rocky, and wind-affected areas where triggering slabs is more likely. Something with the shallow areas there. You've got those deeper layers in the snowpack right now, those facets at the bottom. If you're in a big fat area, you're 2 meters of snow underneath your feet, very low likelihood that your human pressure can get down to that low. But if you're up on ridgetop, 50 centimeters of snow, you're definitely affecting that weak layer down to the basement, and that's where you can give it the potential to propagate and make big avalanches. Carefully assess open slopes and convex rolls where buried surface ore may be preserved. So those big rolls that are super fun to ski, also great spots to trigger avalanches. So we want to really assess what we're doing there. You know, make sure we're staying away from things like terrain traps, gullies, depressions, where areas go into trees, where even a small avalanche right now can make some big problems. Choose slopes that are well supported and have limited consequence. Kind of just touched on that. And then it talks about a moist or wet snow surface. Pinwheeling, which is that rollerball effect. I'm sure you've all seen it. As soon as the sun comes out, you get those snowballs rolling down. Those are all really good indicators that surface snow is going through some change, and you're in a heightened time to trigger avalanches. Things are more likely. So it's still cold out right now. Definitely if you've been out the last couple days, it's pretty chilly. But when you're in the direct sun, it still has quite a punch. And we're getting into that second half of winter where the sun is more powerful. The Earth's doing its tilt axis thing, and we're getting more direct sun. So we're starting to get into that time of year. Just a little avalanche summary from the last few days. Natural avalanches have tapered, but numerous rider-triggered slab avalanches continue to be reported up to size 2.5. Failing on those layers in that upper 50 that we talked about. And it's a really tricky time to be dealing with avalanches when we stop getting that feedback from natural avalanches. It's pretty easy when you go out there and it's just going off and there's avalanches happening everywhere. It's like, okay, there's avalanches, easy to avoid. But right now we're in a time where it's going to be unlikely to see some natural avalanches, but still very much likely for humans. So you're not going to be getting that feedback with Mother Nature telling you what's going on. It's going to be you that figures it out. So hopefully you don't figure it out the hard way. Yeah. And then at the bottom of all the forecasts, you'll see they'll put a spot for confidence, which you think might be a funny thing, but it's a good thing to look at. And usually what you can relate the confidence to is to how certain, or I guess the better way to say it would be the degree of uncertainty that forecaster has about the problems they've put on there. So it goes low, moderate, or high, so it's a 3-step scale. Right now they've got it at moderate, and they say the uncertainty is due to the fact that persistent slabs are particularly difficult to forecast. So like we talked about, we're not getting that feedback with all the natural avalanches. Most of what we're seeing right now is human triggered. So it's pretty hard to pinpoint that. And then their confidence on the high side is due to a stable weather pattern for the next few days with little change expected. So they're landing right in the middle with their confidence right now. One notable avalanche that I wanted to talk about, so this happened 5 days ago. This was up at Sapphire Col. So for those of you not familiar, That's up in Rogers Pass. These guys were going up from the Rubric parking lot up the Lily Glacier, over Sapphire, and down into a Silken side there. So this is above that 2,400 meter mark. That February 1st crust does not exist there. They were coming over the top, first skier down. It's hard to see in this photo, but the avalanche starts here and goes right up into these thin, rocky, shallow areas that we've been talking about. He triggered it when he was near the bottom of the slope, and it came down behind him. He hadn't noticed that he had triggered it, was pushed off his feet. He was okay in the end, but they definitely got surprised. Big takeaway from that one, it's that shallow area right off the ridge top. That's where you're going to find problems right now. There was another large one triggered on avalanche, the access couloir up there the other day. That was some humans going up, triggered a loose dry, which stepped out to a big slab. So anything up high in the pass right now, which is going to seem enticing, and again, difficult, you're going to be out there, you'll see ski tracks in everything right now. There are definitely people getting after it, but don't be lured, make your own decisions, and keep your head up when you're up over 2,500 meters there. The last thing that they added in their min report, which I thought was a nice thing to add, they had some communication difficulties. So after this guy had triggered the avalanches, they didn't have any radios on them. They had quite a hard time talking to him to see if he was okay, if they needed to come down there, if he wanted to come back up, or just making a plan moving forward. So keep that in mind. Carrying radios is a great thing to have. Even a simple walkie-talkie can go a long ways. And then we'll talk some weather here. So right now we're in a ridge of high pressure air. So it's just really calm, stagnant air. Except for today, we did see the winds increase from the east there. But this is our ridge of high pressure where those H's are connected on the map. We're going to see continued cold temperatures and clear skies for the next few days. We might see a classic inversion layer of cloud in the valley bottom here in the next couple of days. And we've got some variable light winds. They're sort of coming from all directions right now. And this ridge is going to break down sort of at the end of the weekend and into next week. We're going to move into a few more regular storm patterns here. So take advantage of the clear weather and get out there. It's really quite good up high. And also take that time to pay attention to that surface snow and keep in mind what that new snow is going to fall on. Does anybody out there have any information about avalanches that you'd like to share?
I'll just say today I had a big objective to go to Sapphire Call, and we actually turned around because the winds surprised us. I don't think these easterly winds were really that clear in the forecast. Is anyone else out today? Yeah, wasn't that surprising? Like, I checked the data logger on the sub-peak of RMR is such a good source of information. I woke up and it was like 50 kilometers an hour from the northeast. That's gotta be wrong. We headed to the Rogers Pass, and sure enough, did you guys see the peaks today? It was just honking. So, huge surprise, I think, for everyone in the industry. We're just getting some information from other guys right now, but it's huge change. That was a little bit of a surprise on all guiding operations. So anything really high definitely got hit by the winds.
So did you head back down the dome side then?
You know what? Didn't make it out of the parking lot.
Oh.
we were supposed to spend the night on Sapphire Call.
Oh,
And that would have been super cold. So if we couldn't ski any good snow, we actually pulled. It was a film project, so if we couldn't get good snow, we decided to pull it in. But you know, places like the Dome is usually such a good spot for when there's winds from the southwest, where it's typical. And I bet that would have been like at a typical time when it's windy, get some awesome POW there. But when you get the east winds, it's like the Dome is facing the east. So to be honest, I think we're all scratching our heads a little bit because it's not common with the east winds of where the good snow's going to be this weekend.
Just one note, today, we did a couple laps on the South Pole, and then we were heading over to Montana, and there was a couple guys sitting there, said, a couple guys came behind us, and there was a big reverse-loaded wind pillow. When you're heading to South Pole, there's there's a ridge that goes up there.
Totally.
And it's protected from the southwest.
Yeah.
But yeah, just nice, big, round, pillowy looking, massive, wind loaded.
Yeah.
And they said, somebody, as we walked by, we said, well, we're not going near that.
Yeah.
And that would probably be a natural. And sure enough, about a half an hour later, some guys came and we were not after it. but I'm waiting for a min. I don't see any.
Okay.
But they
Yeah.
said the guy was okay, lost a ski,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't think there was any burial.
Yeah.
Yeah, just right there and pretty innocuous place that you usually don't have to worry about that.
One thing that's going into our advantage right now is typically this time of year we're really dealing with a lot of persistent weak layers, like super deep in the snowpack, like Ben was saying, like hard to predict because it's not in your ski tips. But right now, if you see wind effect, there's a very good chance you're going to trigger a wind slap. So that's the bonus. The disadvantage is I think with this east wind, you're going to see wind effect everywhere. So it might be, I think we're transitioning to a part where it's going to be harder to find really good snow quality. Where would be a good spot to find the best ski right now? What would you guys think? Come on in. I think with like these winds, anything really high up is going to be super wind affected. So it's that balance of like the skiing trees is kind of tough, right? Because of all the rain event. So there's going to be this magic spot somewhere around tree line that's not super high, that's protected from the wind. Truthfully, I think the slacker and his ego might be some of the best stuff right now. Yeah.
Cool. Sweet, we'll keep moving on here. At any point too, any questions at all, just fire away. We want to have that community conversation rolling. So stop me at any time if you have any questions or find one of us afterwards. A few takeaways from our snowpack talk there. A big one is that where you're finding that robust crust, it's going to be really unlikely to trigger anything below it. So you want to really keep in mind that elevation where the crust stops, around 2,400 meters. And just check in on that crust. Just like any big scar in your relationship, every once in a while you got to go back, take a second look, talk about it, see how it's going. If it's getting better, it's getting worse. And keep that in mind for what's to come here in the future. This crust could very much dictate how the rest of the winter looks once it's got a lot of snow on it. It'll either be a great thing for us and hit that reset button, or it's going to be a big pain in the butt for a little while here. So still too early to tell, but we're getting there. Powder skiing was back. Now it's taking a little break. We'll transition here. I'm just going to go through a little case study. This was a recreational avalanche incident that I was involved with a few years back. So this was early season, November 20th, 2021. I think it has some relation to what's going on right now with that crust being our new ground. We know we were dealing with surface instabilities at the time. I'm not really worried about any deeper layers. And it was a window where stability was pretty good. And we were starting to push our luck a little bit and ski some bigger terrain. So a bit of setup. Like I said, this was early season. There was about 80 to 1.20 meters of snow on the grounds. There was no current avalanche bulletin. They hadn't started yet. So we were kind of on our own for forecasting at that point. In the 2 days prior, there was about 20 to 30 centimeters of new snow. We had been out skiing. Skiing was really good. We were off to a great start that year. And as we were out through the day, we had light winds that sort of started picking up midday. We had talked about that a little bit. But that was our setup for the day. We were a party of 5. We had moderate to advanced experience. All of us had skied with some of the other people at some point, but we had never skied as that group together on our own. Some were very familiar to the area, had skied there lots, and then 3 of us were brand new to it, myself included, hadn't been there before. Had skied in the area quite a bit. This area is down near Fernie. It's in the Flathead region. If you guys ever skied around Harvey's Pass, it's just sort of southeast of Fernie a little bit. And we were going in to ski some steep alpine features, was sort of our objective for the day. So this is the area. It's called the Rad Chutes for those of you who know the area. Our track on the right there, that was our up track, and the track on the looker's left was our first ski run of the day. But as you can see, it was sort of like a few couloirs stacked up right beside each other. A pretty cool spot, and a spot where you can kind of get one up track in and then have a great day in there. So our plans for the day, we wanted to go in there and evaluate that new snow, gather some data. I was just about to go to my operations level 2 course, so I was pretty keen, had my shovel in the snow a lot, was sharpening up those skills before the course. We wanted to stretch the early season legs, and our plan for using the terrain was to spread out and ski it in smaller numbers. Couloirs aren't that fun for the 5th person down, just to ski tracks. So we thought we'd take advantage, spread it out a little bit, get everybody some good skiing. So this is a video. We went up for the first pitch, and my partner and I skied the first line of the day. Bit of a steep couloir chute feature, and then while we were doing that, the remaining 3 were moving a little bit higher to the little bit bigger line, and we were going to report back what we were feeling and seeing, and then wait for them to come down. So quick video just to show what we were seeing. You know, the skiing was pretty darn good. We didn't see any sort of slab reactivity in there. It was all loose snow. Skiing was fantastic. We were pretty fired up. So we reported back exactly that. Technical difficulties. Yeah, so after the first run, we hopped on the radio, told the rest of the group what we had seen. You know, no slab reactivity, loose snow, good skiing. And then my partner and I were parked in a safe spot at the bottom, and we had a small change of plans after we had some good conditions. So we started to fall into this trap pretty quickly. Things are feeling good, let's go for it. So we decided to do that. The original plan, so the black line in the middle was the intended line for the next 3 people to ski. And we were parked up kind of right around here somewhere. We talked to them on the radio. The first 2 people, the remaining 3, skied that line. Same story, no slab reactivity, really good skiing. And the guy left at the top, a good buddy of mine, he asked about how he felt about him skiing the next one over. So the furthest looker's left black line. He's very familiar with the area, and I really trusted his judgment, still do. This accident didn't change anything. We trust each other even more now that we've gone through this and worked it out. So he asked how we felt about him skiing that. We really had no reservations for it. I think I said something along the lines of, wish I was up there to ski it with you. Looks like a sick line. You should probably rip that. So at this point, we're now 4 at the bottom, and he's about to drop into the line. So this video I was taken from the bottom. You can see on the right side, those are all of our tracks coming out from the other run. And he's going to ski this nice couloir right in front of us, and you'll see. So it's kind of tough to see in this video, but right as it's tough to see, we didn't know this at the time at the bottom, but he had triggered the slab pretty much as soon as he got in there, which is in that protected side from the camera there. And as he came around the little dog leg, we were like, wow, this guy's shredding right now. He's going super fast. It's because he was running away from an avalanche. And then we saw the powder cloud chasing him from behind. We said a couple bad words. I put my phone away. We thought we were in a pretty safe spot. But as a powder cloud is racing towards you, you need to reevaluate what you're doing. So we took a step to the side because we thought this thing had potential to come to where we were standing. There's a little micro ridge. You can almost see it in this video. The slope kind of tilts away from us at this point, and the snow ended up getting caught by that ridge, and the flow went to that direction. But this, so this video is by no means like graphic or anything, but if you have a hard time watching people go for rides and avalanches, then this is your warning. So this is him riding the slope. So he was okay in the end. Quite a ride though. It was about 400 meters in elevation that he dropped. A couple interesting things in the video there at the start. You can, now that we know that there was a wind slab in there, obviously we didn't know that at the time, you can see some wind affected snow. You can also see something that you might have heard in AST courses where these avalanches happen in waves. So that first wave slowed down there and you could see the light, and then you saw him get hit by the second wave and he got pushed again. So that's just an interesting thing that you might have heard in a course somewhere, but that's it happening in real life. And he was moving really fast. He got lucky for a lot of reasons, but one of the big ones, there wasn't that much snow on the ground at the time. So for him to hit a rock or something like that at that point would have been really bad for us. So that happened. So now we're at the X on the right. That's where our group is regrouped. We lose sight of him right at the bottom of the couloir where it hits the fan there. There's quite a powder cloud generated, and that was our last seen point of our buddy. So we moved away because we thought we might get involved. So we turn around afterwards. We try him on the radio a couple times, get no answer from him. So we make a plan. It's go time. A few of us start putting skins on, and one guy was on a split board. It was going to take him longer, so he just started boot packing, and that way we had two methods of attack, and whichever got there first was great. So I've got both skins on, and I've just started to take my first few steps up the hill. It's not that far of a distance, and I am a pretty fit and fast guy. It's like 300 meters, but it looked very far away at this time, and it felt like we were miles and miles away from this guy. After I take my first few steps, we get some radio contact from him. It was very broken, but he said that he was on the surface. Gave him a quick question, said, hey, do we need to call search and rescue, like right now, are you injured? This was midday, so still had lots of time to do any kind of rescue. He said, no, I'm okay. I said, sweet, we'll come up to you and find you. And he said, I'm pretty sure we're below you, which seemed very surprising to us. We thought he was up at the bottom of the couloir. But he was like a couple hundred meters below us, way out of sight. So we had gone for quite the ride. We regrouped, had a chat. He was totally fine. He sprained his pinky, which is pretty incredible for that kind of a ride. But it was pretty forceful, and he actually, like, one of his snowboard bindings pulled the threads right out of the snowboard and just ripped it right out of there. So it was a pretty good bumpy ride for him. He was shaken up, but generally okay. So a few big takeaways for us there. Communication over the radio is a lot more difficult than it seems. We had a lot of trust in what we were doing and him communicating what he was seeing at the top of the run to us. But it's just impossible to really say unless you're also there. Also assessing a line if you're by yourself at the top is a lot harder when you don't have somebody to talk it through with. The terrain familiarization within the group definitely played a role in that. I know he had skied that line in particular a handful of times already, not that season, but in years past. So I just really leaned into that and trusted what he was deciding to do. Consider all your options for a potential emergency response. This is one that I thought about for quite a bit afterwards. So we were at the bottom, my partner and I, for probably 20 or 30 minutes, having lunch, hanging out in the sun. Our plan was probably to go up and either do another lap or at least ski a lap of the fan. So we were there for quite a while. Looking back, I wish that I had put my skins on early. I knew we were going back up anyways. And after this happened, that would have saved so much time and stress. Trying to fumble and put all your stuff together when you're trying to really get into go time, things just get sloppy and you make mistakes. So just think about that kind of thing. Something I like to think about somewhat regularly is what's the worst thing that could happen right now and how would I deal with that? Even if I'm just chilling in the sun and everything seems like it's going great, it doesn't take that much time for it to change. And just slow things down. Take baby steps. We definitely got a little overzealous there and just walked in that place like we owned it and we're gonna ski the shit out of it, and it didn't work out that well for us. So take your time, especially around here right now. Like I said, there's gonna be a lot of ski tracks in big, cool looking lines, but just because they got away with it doesn't mean it's gonna be the same for you. So take your time, ease into things out there. And just one thing that I like to remember, somebody told me in a course one time, it will often be your good habits that will save you when you need it. So all those things we talk about in courses, you know, spreading people out on slopes, regrouping in safe spots, skiing things one at a time, even when it seems like it's a time that you might be able to bend the rules a little bit. If you find yourself in a spot one day where something's happening, it's likely going to be one of those habits that saves your butt. Whether that's the avalanche goes right by you as you're in the trees, or you have one person buried in your group instead of 5 people buried in your group, all those little good habits add up to saving your butt when you really need it. So something I like to keep in mind. And just a couple things for me to finish on a lighter note. We're getting into spring travel here. A couple things I've noticed lately: if you are in lower elevation in Rogers Pass on a skin track, it is frozen and rock solid and very slippery. So bring your ski crampons. You'll probably look like the genius in the group. Skin wax is a great thing to have. We're getting into those warmer temps, not quite yet, but we're getting there. So that's just going to help that snow not build up on the bottom of your skins. A very cheap thing to have in the pack that will definitely get you some beers in the parking lot if you give it to other people. And we're getting also into that time where we're going to want to start playing the aspects. So really pay attention to what the sun's doing, what time of day. You know, it starts on the easterly slopes first, moves to the south, goes to the west. And north facing is where you're going to usually find that dry, preserved snow once we get into those long sunny periods. That's what happens if you forget to bring skin wax. It sucks. And I think this is the last thing for me. So I'm also a member of the Revelstoke Search and Rescue. We just had a couple of things we wanted to pass on from the last month. Early January was very busy for us. We had a 10-day period where we had 10 calls. So we basically had one a day, every day. Largely snowmobiles either breaking down or going into areas that they couldn't get out of. So make sure you know where you are and that you can get back out of there. We've also noticed a bit of an increase in accidental iPhone activations. This was a big thing last year, and it's starting to poke its head out again. So if you have an iPhone 14 or newer, it has a feature that when you get the phone, it's automatically turned on. And if it senses a quick deceleration, it will automatically call search and rescue. The feature works, but it also works a little bit too well sometimes. You can turn this feature off in your settings. So especially, it seems to happen more on snowmobiles. They have higher speeds, a little bit easier. So try and turn that off in your phone if you're spending time in the backcountry. Make sure you're carrying an SOS device, some sort of in-reach spot, some way to call for help. And if you need help, call it early. It's way better to get the ball rolling. Realistically, from you pushing that button to us meeting at the search and rescue hall, if we get there in an hour, it's fast. We'll put in then another half hour to make a plan, get people out the door, hour and a half to 2 hours until we're on the way. So keep that in mind. Especially if you're later in the day, push that button early, and it's free. We'll come and get you, no charge, helicopter, whatever it is. If you're from out of country, don't worry about it. You may still have to pay a hospital bill. We don't worry about that. But for us to come and get you, totally free. So please do not hesitate. We've got a wicked search and rescue team here, and we like going on missions. So give us something to do on a nice quiet night, and we'll happily come see you out there. And that's it for me. So we'll take a quick break. I think we'll do some raffle tickets, and then we'll have Mark talking to us for the second half.
All right, everybody, please welcome Mark Smiley to the stage.
Thank you. All right. Well, that was a very good act to follow in terms of I learned something, and so thank you very much. I think my takeaway was the idea that the crust stops at a certain elevation, and once I go above that crust, it's like back on. Just like stepping from not a glacier to a glacier. Those are two different snowpacks. It's like, well, that's kind of unique to hear. That's new to me, because I've only been here 2 years. This is my third winter. Originally from Indiana, the very ski mecca of Indiana, and made my way to Revelstoke through a series of events. And I'm psyched to be here and to share with all you guys specifically about navigation. And I think I put this together today, and I think that getting lost in 2024 is inexcusable. And I think that because compared to even, 15 or 20 years ago, you actually had to like really lean in and learn like in-depth stuff about navigation, map, compass, declination, route planning, paper, all that kind of stuff. And now with the technology that we have in our pockets, it is frickin' easy, okay? And so this talk isn't too long because it's really easy to navigate now. And so what we're going to talk about, we're going to dispel some disbeliefs of using your smartphone to navigate, the things that you need, some example features, a little case study, and then we're going to go into this rubric. That's a fancy name for drop-down boxes that spit out a color for finding new partners. That's not navigation, that's something different. And then we're going to have a sweet deal on some future education products that you could utilize. All right, so the first thing, what you need to have an app. Who has a subscription to an app on their phone currently in terms of a navigation app? Okay, who does not? Okay, so if you don't, then you might want to hit that QR code with your phone, and it is an affiliate link. I get paid $2.86 every time someone signs up. And it will give you $12 off the $60 annual subscription to Gaia GPS, which is my favorite one. And so whether it's Gaia, whether it's FatMap, whether it's CalTopo, I think Strava has one. What are the other big players out there? Onyx, FatMap. Yeah, I'd say the big four are Gaia, FatMap, Onyx, CalTopo, Avenza. Okay, that's a good one. And all of these have their like strengths where I do this the best. I do this the best. I have found that Gaia does all of them pretty darn good, and that's why I'm most familiar with that. So that's I'm psyched to promote Gaia, but any of them, all you need to do is, and there's some jargon here. Some of this will be like big yawn for some people, and other people will be like, whoa, slow down. But when you have your GPS app, you need to have a map layer and a route line, okay? If you have those two things offline, you're good to go, okay? And now we can dive into that, the map layers that are offline. I like a topo map and a satellite, okay? So you can actually see the glacier, the crevasses on the glacier from their satellite view. You get that for $42 a year. Like, if you would have told someone that in 2000 that was a thing, they would have just been like, when I first started guiding 2005 on Mount Rainier, I paid $389 for a Garmin eTrex and $99 for a micro SD card with 2 states worth of 1 to 24,000 topo maps, and you'd have to load it up. And then if you're going to do like one of the PCT or the ACT, you needed 4 or 5 of these chips, the micro SD cards for $100 each. And now all of that is, just a subscription fee. So it's pretty cool. And then the other thing you need is so this is a hot term, commit it to memory if it's not already there, it's GPX file, okay? GPX is the equivalent to a JPEG. JPEG photo, GPX. Exactly. All right. So just the other day, I shot Cam a text, hey, can I get the GPX file for that tour you did? And within 1 minute, I had the GPX file, I loaded it onto my phone, I clicked on that line on Gaia and said, download maps for this route line. And within 4 minutes, I had done all of my route planning. That in 2000, number one, wouldn't be possible. And if I would have gotten out all the maps, I'd have to find, okay, it's a big deal how easy it is. Are you tracking how this is like stupid easy and I could be done in like 4 seconds here? All right. And so then the thing that needs to be dispelled is that, yes, these batteries do die, especially with cold, so I try to keep it close to my person, away from my beacon, and then I have an external battery. And what I've found, just anecdotally, I'm not, any type of electrical scientist or whatever, electrical engineer, is that if I have that like Magna case battery and it's plugged and it's on, that warms the battery to where I will stay at 100% the whole day, even in frickin' cold like it was 3 weeks ago.
So you plug it in the whole time?
Exactly. Or just turn it on. Like at least for the Apples, that it has like the click on battery, no wires needed, and it just is running. And so then that external battery, or the case battery, some people have case batteries in their cases, that will be drawn on first, and it'll probably be like 3 o'clock in the afternoon by that time that's dead, and then it's on the phone battery, okay? And so keeping it warm is important. In the summertime, keeping it cool is important too. Like if you get into camp and you're like, you put your phone on the rock and it's got the sun on it, it's gonna cook a battery as well. The adage is batteries don't die, they're killed, okay? So extreme cold and extreme heat will kill a battery. Also, plugging your phone in and leaving it charging overnight, that's not good, okay? If you're gonna, now we're really in the rabbit hole. If you're gonna do like a 5-day thing, like an expedition, your best use of an external battery is going to be taking your phone from 20% to 80% and being like psycho about unplugging it at 80%, because a battery is, the analogy is a football stadium. So when those, the anodes and cathodes or electrons are going in, those first seats are really easy to fill up. And then once it's 80%, that little electron trying to find the next spot to sit has to look longer for it. And so that's why a lot of phones will advertise, this phone charges super fast, it can go to 80% in blah, blah, blah minutes, okay? Because of that concept, okay? So just, unplug it at 80%, drain it to 20, plug it back in.
Cool.
Yeah, all right. Next slide.
Scientist for sure.
I'm an electric scientist. Okay. Does it screw up the video if I leave this? Okay, I'll just talk loudly because I need to mirror my phone. Oh, cool.
I haven't seen TV
All right, let's see how fast I can. Any questions about that? I can very, very bad at multitasking, but I can try.
Are those the pyramids?
Yes, they are.
I watch those videos all the time. Fuck, I can't wait till the aliens come back.
Yes, it worked. All right.
Is that the angle of the face?
Okay, so I'm gonna fire up Gaia GPS, and so we're inside the. Can everyone see that? Okay, or should I? All right. If you can't see, maybe
Your color.
move. Okay, so here's a little case study from yesterday. 2 days ago, my wife and I were skiing the side country at Revelstoke, and I've only skied Revelstoke Mountain less than 20 days or so, so it's all still pretty new, especially the side country, because a lot of times I'm just on the magic carpet. And I have a 5-year-old. And the other day we skied side country, and when we got to the exit where there's like the big sign that says, "Don't drop below here, people have died," you drop below there, and then there's those stop and resort this way. What's it called? Catchment? Catcher's mitt. Okay. So the catcher's mitt, when I got to there, I was like, oh, this is cool. I've always skinned up and, hit the higher track. And it was very well established, and it was like, this would be good to record. So I hit the record button when I was out there, and I got this red line right here, okay? And so then Cam sent me his, what's it called? What kind of track? GPX track, exactly. And that was this purple line. And so, Ghost North GPX. So we skied Ghost North, and I used several times I accessed the line and I said, locate me, and then his line was to the left, so I moved left. And it was super easy. And up on this ridge, we get to this point right here, do a transition, and these trees were in our way, couldn't see, but it was like, okay, we're just gonna ski not very far down to a lake. And then we could open it up and shred, 2 different lines, not even in view of each other, my wife and I, and then we ended up on the lake together. And it was so easy because I had the map layer downloaded, which was also the satellite, satellite and topo. So back to at the end of the day, I was tired, really tired, and we got all the way to the top of, is it Montanable? Kootenay, where you could drop off the backside where we went to get out to the Ghost. We're at the high point. We ski down. We get to that first cat track road, and it was like, do we put our skins on? And I was like, catcher's mitt. And I'm like, no, we have like 5 contour lines, maybe even 6 before we get to the catcher's mitt. So let's just gravity out of here, and we don't have to put our skins on, okay? And that probably saved us 25 minutes and a whole lot of effort. And it was like, yeah, I'm good at this. And it totally worked out, okay? Another thing that we used yesterday was, so this is at the top of the Ghost, and there are several couloirs. So when you're doing a top-down approach, you want to make sure you're picking the right line, okay? And so this guy right here, if I hit it, it's going to point me to the Legion. But what I use a lot is I'll double tap it, and then whatever I'm pointing my phone at is what is in front of me, okay? And so if I'm standing on that ridge, and I'm like, I'm 90% sure this is the coulee, because that looks pretty sick, and it's steep, but it kind of doglegs right, and it looks cliffy, and I definitely don't want to go down the wrong one. And so, using that double tap feature, which I'll just show you now. So you can see how the icon changes. And now this is pointing wherever I'm pointing the phone. And if I want to walk to La Baguette, oh, it's that way. Okay, wait, or is it?
Can you load like the police check stops on this?
The police check. Yeah, let's see if that's a layer. Okay, so some features you get with the Pro, some you get with this basic. That might have every 3 months they change it. Just if you're new to this, just get the basic subscription. It'll blow your mind, and then if you want to nerd out farther, you can. But things like opacity, changing the opacity of like multiple layers, so I can have the topo lines and the satellite at the same time, which is kind of helpful. Okay. Another thing in terms of features is that I had done all the route planning. My wife had done all the parenting, and then when we got out there, I was like, "Did you get the route line?" No. Oh, here you go. We're in the middle of nowhere, no cell service, and I'm just going to arbitrarily pick here. Found the route line, selected it, and then said share. So I shared it, and here we are at the bottom. Export, you can't read it, but it's GPX, okay? And then I export the GPX file, and I airdrop that. And she's got it, okay? That's why I never ski with anyone who doesn't have an iPhone.
I mean, the moral of the story is you can prevent domestic dispute while skiing with your partner.
That's right. Just everyone has to have an iPhone.
No more freakouts.
Yeah.
I've actually noticed hilariously with Gaia on their web browser and on Android, you can get their maps in 3D, but not on iPhone.
Ah, dang it! You're busting my bubble. And like every 3 months, something changes. So like staying, kind of current with it is tough. But at its core, we're gonna get the GPX file. We're gonna download the maps for that GPX file. Make sure that it's truly offline, because sometimes it'll be like, you need to update. And you're like, ah. Like I did a whole expedition in Peru, had done my homework, but it didn't fully download, and Wi-Fi in Peru was like not happening, so I was just out of luck. So that this is maybe sophomore level here, but you select the GPX file or the route line, and then you can say more, and this is a time saver. Download maps for track. So if you're going to do the Bugaboos to Rogers Traverse, you either need to have 20 gigs of free space on your phone, or you put in an accurate route line, and then you say download maps for track, and it'll just get the tiles all the way along that given route. When we crossed the Alps, we were doing an insane amount of kilometers every day, and without that feature, we would have been hosed. And then when you deviate from that, that's a problem. So, but this is a real time saver. Okay. I think those are all the features that I wanted to share about Gaia. I mean, it's, yeah, pretty, that's what I use 99.9% of the time. Now I'm going to go over to FatMap and give you an example of...
This is the avalanche terrain overlay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about that.
No, this is aspect. Okay, so who wants to give me a great, concise definition of aspect? It's not a trick question.
It's a compass.
A compass.
There's a compass involved.
Okay, good.
Which way the slope is facing.
Which way the slope is facing. Okay, I like it. Yeah.
That's
That's solar. Yeah, but aspect would factor into the solar effects. Like the east aspect is gonna get blank sun.
The wind that we had.
Yeah, so east aspects are gonna get morning sun. West aspects are gonna get evening sun. North aspects in the northern hemisphere are gonna get little sun, maybe no sun, right? And so aspect is one of these jargon terms that I probably, for a decade, never wanted to ask about because it should have been known, but I went past that training without fully understanding what it meant. So I'm just going to talk down to everyone in the room so we can all go up together and you don't have to be that person. So these are the pyramids of Giza. Okay? And it was the best representation of aspect that I could find because there are definitively 4 sides, right?
And due to continental drift, they don't align anymore.
Okay. So and these are, I've been doing a lot of YouTubing about the pyramids, and everyone thought that they were like the tomb for the pharaohs, and now it's coming out that they were actually like a Tesla coil, like they had electricity before the asteroid hit the Earth 13,000 years ago, and there's a whole civilization. It's pretty cool stuff. But it's also a really good way to see aspect, okay? And FatMap has this layer that I think all of the other apps should absolutely rip off because it's awesome. And I'll tell you why in a minute, like in real time, or for an example that almost killed me 3 weeks ago. So here's your compass rose. And when you're looking at a paper map, north is always up. When you're looking at a digital map, north can be wherever, and you just have to hit that little red is north. And if you double tap that, it'll reorient it north, which it already was. So here. So if I hit that little button, it reorients it north. And now, if the avalanche danger is saying that there is buried surface hoar on north aspects, what color should I not ski? Blue. It's so easy, right? Like, if I'm in red or green and there's no other avalanche problems and it's just this buried surface hoar on north aspects, all I have to do is say, just stay off the blue. And it's super easy, okay? So let's go to a real example here. Okay, so yeah, so aspect is just north, south, east, or west. And then I guess you have like the northwest, northeast, but just keep it north, south, east, or west. So it's, if someone asks you what aspect, it's basically a multiple choice question with 4 answers, okay? North, south, east, or west, and that's it. And then the other, okay, have I hit that enough? We got that one?
Got it.
Okay. All right, so here is the example. This is from the Icefall Lodge, and this is an avalanche that I got caught and carried in. It was during that week of like the Arctic blast, and it was the first day that I was guiding, and it was like negative 25 degrees. And that was a human factor that I had never really had to deal with, like we all did that week. And it was the end of the day. Guys' feet were numb, and it was like, we need to get home, back to the hut. And these guys were like chargers, and I wanted to deliver the awesomeness for them. And so I was trying to get up to this other shot and parked them in the shade. That was the only option. Went up to the slope myself, determined it was not safe enough for a number of reasons, came back. They had already been standing there for 10 minutes, and now I was like, let's go to our safer option, which is down this slope, and we will just get home. We'll just get home. So we skied down to here, parked him here, and I saw that it was wind affected. And I was like, well, 50-50 chance this slides, but we needed to go. And so I dropped in heavy on, trying to get it to break at my skis, and it broke above me. It caught, carried me in a wind slab. And the point of the story is that on our avalanche problems from the guide the week previous, he was staying off of steep, south-facing aspects. This is a new area to me. I was kind of turned around with my compass, and I could have just very easily opened up FatMap, said locate me, seen that I was on the south aspect, and gone somewhere else, just a little bit further over that I could have hooked into the east aspect and then swung around. And so aspect is a really key and fundamental tool that we can know very quickly using the FatMap layer, okay? Elevation is also one of these like core things. So it's elevation, aspect, and slope angle, right? Like if we know those, we've just covered, again, like some high percentage of our bases in terms of like seeing where the problem is and avoiding it, or seeing where it is and dealing with it with the tools that we have to deal with it, like a ski cut or like a belayed something or other, or fill in the blank, okay? Let's see. That was all navigation. I don't have anything else to say about navigation. All right. We're going to shift gears. This is going to be like 5 minutes or so of, but if you do, does anyone have any questions about navigation stuff, or maybe how you use it differently, or
But is it FatMaps that has this?
It is FatMap. So I have 2 subscriptions, one to Gaia and one to FatMap.
So Gaia 99%, and then FatMap's the other percent. Those are the 2 you use.
Yep.
But
Yep.
the FatMaps does have this kind of like avalanche terrain overlay
Yeah.
thing.
Um,
So my Euro buddies were showing me that. It was quite interesting.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
no.
Derail your presentation.
Okay. So up here, I just hit the layers button.
Yeah.
Up there.
Yeah.
And they're always adding new ones. And this is just kind of a simplified slope angle
Yeah.
thing.
Hey, why is the time on your phone only 9:41?
Good,
I don't know.
That's always been 9:41,
good question.
and it's 7:47.
Very interesting.
We're in the Matrix. We're in the Matrix.
That's when the presentation.
So
Derail.
So this is the avalanche, and all of the apps have this. It's just like it's chunking up the slope angle into 5-degree chunks and putting a color to them, and it's super helpful. Last year I was at the Snowfall Lodge, got to somewhere I shouldn't have been. Again, day 1, first time on-site guiding, and we ski down, and we're way lower than we should be given the amount of snow that was, in the snowpack, and it was starting to cliff out, and we were using it on the regular because I was trying to get back to the hut in and out of these gullies, and it was a huge amount of work to break trail, and so the options were up and over, hold our elevation and over, or down and over. And every 300 meters I had to make that decision, and it cost, like, there was a high price to pay if it was wrong. And so there was, at one point, there was this red blob indicating, steep, and it was like the orange blob was a little higher, and then it went white, and it was like, let's gain that bench and get over, instead of going into this, red zone. And so that layer is pretty good. And I think it's a nerd game, but kind of fun to play guess that slope angle, because most people will guess higher. Like we get into the ghost and I'm like standing there like this, like, you know, this must be 63 degrees. And it was only 52 degrees. But everyone like, and then once it got to 48 degrees, I was still like, I could still tomahawk to my death here. Got the pole on the slope, got my slope angle measure thing, and then you can correlate that with what FatMap or whatever app is saying, and train your eye to say that slope is X degrees. And really on the 101 level is that's not avalanche terrain. Now I'm in avalanche terrain. Everyone needs to know how to be able to say that, okay? Because if I'm touring along, I don't want to be stressed out when I'm in non-avalanche terrain. I want to save all of that mental stress for when I step in, ding, I'm in avalanche terrain now. Okay, heads up, what are the problems? What am I seeing? Da, 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 da. Okay?
Yeah, that's how I felt when I landed in the valley coming out of the blanket today. I was like, okay, now I'm in avalanche terrain.
Great.
Watch out! Watch out! One caveat is this doesn't factor in run-out zones.
Yeah.
So I think they should call it just slope angle measurement, not avalanche terrain, because you can absolutely remote trigger, like the photos Ben was showing, you can remote trigger something from a non-avalanche terrain section and get killed by that. It doesn't matter, like you'd have to be really unlucky, I think, to get killed by, you know, standing in the flats and get killed by an avalanche from above. But it's more for like camping or like taking a break. You know, where are you going to set up your tent? Oh, it's white here. And you're like, well, what's above me? Okay, that's where I think the apps need to take their game to the next level and say, you know, it doesn't mean you're safe. Okay. All right. So let's go back. So this is going to link you to a virus. So go ahead and scan that. No, this will take you to my website, mountainsense.com, and it's a open to the public tool to use for when you're potentially going to ski with a new partner. Okay, so when I was guiding a lot, we'd get a text, hey, take out Bob tomorrow. This is in the Tetons in Wyoming. And so I'd text with Bob, hey, I'll be your guide tomorrow. What ability ski level are you? And everyone would say, I'm pretty good. Okay, like, but what are you? Like, the Tetons have something for everybody. I can deliver you something that will exceed your tour by yourself by 15%, but I don't want to exceed you by 50%, okay? And so let's see if this link works. The link is not going to work. Maybe if you want to use that, you can use it. And if you don't, I don't care. But know that it's there. So if you want to take a picture of that link, you can do that. And basically, I just went with the karate belts, you know, white to black. And,
It's not
you know,
the same.
and it's, you know, like if you, you know, you can ski tour, you know, what's an average day for you? What's a slope angle you're comfortable with? What else? Are you comfortable skiing, you know, these different things? Do you have medical training? All of the questions that are kind of like hard to ask if you're going to be touring with someone for the first time. And this is it's just a tool to start that conversation, okay? I have found it to be helpful when I'm traveling. So like, I go to, I don't know, where, Chamonix, and it's like, I got a free day. I want to ski with somebody. You know, who's available? And we've all seen these, you know, posts on Facebook or whatever. It's like, hey, I got my AST1. Who wants to tour with me? And you're like, I mean, if you don't have your AST1, then you're like, yeah, I'll go with you. And if you have anything higher than AST1, then you're like, yeah, maybe I'll pass on that one. Okay, and so there's a lot of factors in play of finding a ski partner, because it's not like finding a mountain biking partner, right? It's not, because like they have to dig you out if it hits the fan, right? And so these partnerships are sacred, you know, like they're hard to find. Finding partners is a challenging thing to do, but I found as my skill increased that the number of people that want to ski with me has increased as well. So if you're finding that no one's calling you, no one's texting you back to go skiing with you, maybe up your skill level.
Yeah. Nice and harsh. Good.
Is that harsh?
Yeah, 'cause for those
There's
that's
many reasons why somebody might not want to ski with you.
What? But
it's good. It's good.
there's many other reasons,
Yeah.
but that's a core one.
I like that a lot.
I mean, I'm not, like if you're insulting their heritage or something, you might not want to ski with them again, okay, last slide. Oh no, that isn't the last. That is the last slide. Wait for it. This was the good deal I was about to drop on every. Here we go. Epic deal. Epic deal. All right. So, if you want to increase your skills, and you also don't have a ton of time and money to hire a private guide, which you can also do. I am for hire to go out and into the mountains and teach you stuff. I created these Mountain Sense courses that are on your own, at home, watch the videos. And for people in this room, you can get 55% off any of the courses for the next week. I don't do that deal really ever. But this is fun because we're actually in the same room together and it's not on Instagram or whatever. So, the people that have done the courses dig them. And what's I think cool about it is the questions that I get. Like each of the videos you watch, you can write a comment. You can see other people's comments and my response. And you write a question, and I get an email, and then I write it back. Write the answer back. So it's a living, breathing course that you get forever access to. It's not a subscription or anything. And really, the motivation of it was coming from Indiana. I had no mentors. I had the School of Hard Knocks was definitely where I lived until I was about 27 years old when I started doing guide training courses. And even then, there was definitely some hard knocks along the way. And so this doesn't remove hard knocks. It just makes it a little bit easier to not fall in all the same pitfalls that somebody without some level of proper training would get. And I don't know, there's a lot of courses there, and you can check them out. So, any questions about navigation?
Great.
Can I get your ghost GPS?
Yeah, exactly.
Send the GPS.
You can. You can. The ghost, the conditions in the ghost were very firm. And then the bottom apron was like blower. So, but yeah, that steep and that firm, it's pretty heads up. Okay, so I have a question for you guys. What do you think are some of the hurdles? Well, maybe first question is it hard to find partners to tour with?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, what do you think is the main difficulty?
There's a lot of
Personality
kooks
type.
out there.
People don't reply to text messages very well.
Okay.
And if you message 3 people and none of them reply, you message 3 more people and one of them replies. You message 3 more people and then all of them reply. Yeah. You've got way too many people to go skiing with.
Right.
We need a nap.
Need an app.
We'll call it Skinder.
Vanishing.
Oh my god. Do it.
Skinder. Have you imagined the profile? Yeah.
So there's, yeah, I think personality type is a big thing. What about skiing ability? Is that, have you ever lost a ski partner because of second place personality? Risk tolerance? Okay. And how do you measure risk tolerance?
Ask them what they want to ski.
Okay.
What are their objectives?
Yeah. So an objective based.
Feel comfortable skiing ratio of what they want to do versus their
It's just
ability.
like knowledge. It's like how much they already have in their brain.
And okay, so actually, this is the first time I've done this. Raise your hand if you know somebody that's sketchy in the backcountry. Do you know somebody that's sketchy in the backcountry? Raise it high.
Everybody is sometimes.
Well, why isn't your hand up?
I'm not
Put your hand up if you know someone that's sketchy in the backcountry. Okay, now put your hands down. Raise your hand if you are sketchy in the backcountry.
Sometimes. I don't think I am.
Yeah. So it's like I think that's the answer. It's a sometimes thing. Like if I had a near miss, that next day I'm gonna have no risk tolerance. I'm gonna be scared of my shadow. And if I just like crushed it, then I'm gonna I'm gonna be emboldened by that. Or I've just been skiing however many days in a row. On the 7th day of the hut trip, I'm ready to like go for the espresso shots. Where the first 6 days is like, and so risk tolerance I think is pretty tricky to both know yourself, and even harder to say like your risk tolerance is harder than mine or higher or low, right? And then what do you do with that? I've been thinking about this a lot. So I was talking to one friend who's like charging, and we went skiing together a few times this year, and he had a near miss. Came over, chatted with him, and it kind of surfaced this concept of like, is your partner pumping the brakes or are they pushing the gas compared to you? And I think that discrepancy is what we can tune into and know. Is this person always, like saying like, well, maybe have you considered, maybe I don't know if this is the right idea. What did you do? In fact, that's pumping the brakes. And if they're like, let's go, is this GoPro rolling? And that's their only, question, then that person's pushing the gas. And so, having, you can only control you, but if you have that wherewithal of like what your partners are doing, then that can be an aid, because you're never going to be like, yeah, I'm sketchy Mark, like who wants to go skiing with me? Cool.
Some people might like that. Yeah.
I guess you're right.
I know basically what they do.
All right. Okay.
Guys, thanks so much for coming tonight. We'll do the raffle here. Huge props to Ben for putting that presentation together. It basically spent 2 years. Was there any follow-up questions with the snowpack you guys want to ask before heading out this weekend?
Mark?
And then big props to Mark. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mark.
Putting this together. Mark has poured his heart and soul into Mountain Sense. It's definitely worth checking out. If there's nothing else to this caliber out there, so yeah, props to that.
Hey, bye. Thank you for coming to State of the Snowpack, sponsored by Capow Guiding.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.